Observed drawing, I find, is a starting point of everything I do. Drawing from nature, drawing from the human form, drawing from animal forms, plant forms, bones. Just observed drawing is a starting point. These etchings are very similar from their starting point to my drawings. It's the landscape and the quality of light in this area. It's fascinating. It changes by the hour. And I developed the process on my own press, a press I developed particularly for schools, so that small children can actually use a high quality etching press. Working on canvas with oil is obviously something I've always done. I was trained as a painter and sculptor, so painting I've continued to do all my life. And it could be portrait, it could be figure painting, it could be landscape, it could be very abstract, but working with oil is really sort of a love of mine. This is my interpretation of a ballista. I was commissioned by a TV programme, Granada TV, to look at the machines that were used at the Siege of Alicia in France, where the Romans besieged the Gauls. And no one really knows what the machines were like. There's no actual evidence. There's lots of little bits and pieces, but no real evidence. But I enjoyed building it because it uses sculptural techniques again, the mixture of metal and wood and rope and string. I find it not only a functional piece of work, but aesthetically quite interesting as well. Over the years, I seem to have drifted into TV quite a lot. I've worked on an enormous amount of historical TV programmes and also some quite light programmes, for example, Scrappy Challenge and Jackass. One programme I was asked to work on was a programme about some female gladiators. They found the remains of them somewhere near the Museum of London. And on the basis of those artefacts, they produced a programme saying how do they work, what do they do, etc., etc. I designed the complete set for the film, for the programme, and this is just one of the helmets that one of the female gladiators wore. But this is it's a piece of sculpture really, but people think it's armour. In actual fact, it's not armour. Dogs weren't armoured in this way. But what brought me onto making this, I was actually restoring armour for a collector. And my training as a sculptor, it was very useful because the adaptation from the techniques for forging metal for sculpture to actually using metal in an armour situation was quite an intriguing one. And I realised that the people that actually made armour in the 15th century, etc., were really superb sculptors. They're wonderful craftsmen, but it's functional sculpture. And the techniques I've used are traditional techniques. It's steel, it's based on blocks of metal, not a mould. The hinges are all made traditionally, and the etching is acid etching, as would have been used. Also carving the dog in the first place, to actually study the anatomy of a dog, to know how the bones went together, so that it looked sort of aggressive, old, and yet it's not. It's a parody, really. This is using the same techniques as I used on the dog armour, but this is just used in a purely sort of creative mode. The metal's been raised on metal blocks and beaten into shape, and then welded in places, and then finished with a patterner to bring out the shapes and the contours. But working with metal, I find very enjoyable. This is a forged EN9 iron chair. I say EN9 because that's a carbon steel, and it's incredibly hard to work with. And to shape these pieces of metal, I used a power hammer. I've been working on some TV programmes where I required the use of a power hammer to make some siege engines, and I couldn't resist staying behind and actually producing something for myself rather than mechanical sort of artefact. And so these shapes were forged and polished and welded together to produce a range of furniture. I also started to forge into the metal silver, copper and brass and melt metal into it in a jewellery like quality, because jewellery is also an interest of mine. I work in silver, gold, platinum. These two pieces are ceramic. They could be maquettes for a larger piece of work, but I found working with clay a really nice material to work with. It's so easy to work with, and you can work with it at different stages, when it's very soft, medium hard, and even sort of really rock hard, so you can get the texture of the material to really show up. But the starting point for these was a mixture of architecture and organic forms. I've always found natural forms, nature's forms, absolutely intriguing, but I also love architecture as well, the way things are made, the way things are put together.